There's a very fundamental mistake that's being made today in today's politics in this country, and since it's right down our alley, let's us have our say in it. We'll take a step back and arrange things back along the lines of the classic battle of good and evil. There's a priest on one side and there's a pimp on the other. And the priest says, say what you mean what you say, everything else comes from the evil. Then you draw a line into the middle and there's a flip-flop, and that line goes out to the other side and there's a pimp. And the pimp knows how to hustle, con, manipulate, and intimidate everybody. That pimp in our world is called the bad guy, and the priest is called the good guy. And there's that flip-flop, a sense of original sin. Both the Catholic and the atheist define mental illness as the normal taken into the abnormal, from a cold to the flu to pneumonia. The Catholics say, wait a minute, go backwards. From pneumonia back to the flu and back to the cold, back to being normal, and normal is not good enough. For example, the young man sits in a chair, fantasizes about the gal until he becomes sexually aroused, then stops, looks around, and do it again, only this time you're fantasizing about actually getting the gal pregnant. And there you go. Now I understand what original sin is with a snap of a finger. For that young man to associate those strong feelings with actually getting the gal pregnant is not a natural thing at all. And so I do it intentionally. I have to be taught that. That along with the other things that go with it, what takes away your free will, fear, sex, ignorance, and violence. And so I straighten myself up emotionally. I will the good of another person, and I do it because Christ rose on the third day. And those three things make up God and country. Straightening up my emotions, willing the good of another person, and doing it because of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist and that sort of thing. So I'm a Yank. I'm for race relegated to an endearing quality of your parents. I'm for being normal and well-adjusted, even though I know I probably will never bat 300. Then I become a good husband to a wife and a good father. And it's a good citizen, and it spills over into home economics. I put the priest in charge, and the priest institutionalizes the idea of the leadership style of washing the feet of the apostles, and then that turns into willing the good of another person, making money by putting somebody else in their own business, making somebody else better off, and that turns into a normal supply and demand curve, turns into home economics. Let's apply this to the immigration crisis in this country. There are millions of people who flooded into this country, and many of them are just not very nice people. We're changing the demographics they used to brag about here in Tucson, and they certainly did. But there are lots of other immigrants who are American Yanks. Let's stop and we'll play a clip from something off the computer to make our point. Let's show this young man, and then we'll come back and have a talk and make our point.
At all. Nobody's burning no flag.
Amen to this. Always respect and protect the American flag.
You ain't burning that flag. I don't care. I'm Mexican. My family's no immigrant. You're not burning that flag. You're not burning that flag. You're not burning that flag. You're not burning that flag.
Did you see that? Somebody grabbed that young man and pull him over here. He's called one of the good guys, a Yank. You see those other guys? They're called the bad guys. Who else is a good guy? Well, Donald Trump. He ran not as a Republican or a Democrat, but as somebody standing up to a bum's rush. He has a chance to be a George Washington to the entire world, and we're going to hold him to it. Who is considered one of the bad guys? Well, courts in the United States. Remember, in the early to mid-70s, the courts came out and said, we just decided there would be no more religion in government. They would have the sexual revolution, in other words, malice, and they institutionalized the idea of making money by causing other people to have to work more hours. In other words, they threw out God, they threw out a judicial court, and they threw out decency as a formal argument. Those three things that make up God and country and cause home economics, the very thing that made the United States such a magical place to live, out of Socrates and Plato and all those other guys, and the Catholic Church, the ones who cause it all to come into being to begin with. Who else are part of the bad guys? Well, Harry the hippie and Al the Afro and Donna the feminist. They're all the same group. If you look at their characteristics, they all do the same thing. They have no love or empathy, and they just want to be the class of professional consumers. Now, how about the Mexican government? Remember, in the 1920s, there was a vicious and violent revolution between the Catholics and the communists, and communists simply won. They call themselves a class of intelligentsia. They do all the consuming, and everybody else does all the producing. There's a huge gap and a huge class of peasantry. If you're arrested, you have to prove your innocence. If you criticize the government, you can be arrested. There was a Catholic bishop just a few years ago who was arrested for criticizing the government on abortion. So that there's nothing keeping anybody from pushing that fence south. There's nothing keeping anybody from getting that feminist, communist president, the one who said they didn't want to give up their identity after all of this. They can dissolve the communist government. They can adopt a Yankee dollar. They can adopt decency as a formal argument. They can go get some garbage sacks, and they can go and form a class of peasantry beneath the class of poverty that they caused. And that's the attitude you have to take. And next time that they start talking about political issues, contemporary political issues, you take a step back. You impose decency as a formal argument, and you push things all the way through. I'm sure Mexico won't mind a bit becoming a territory of the United States, and that's exactly the sort of things that has to happen. Well, the whole idea is to get you to join this gang in the playground. So if you're a young man who's a Mexican man, well, you're a Yank now. They're going to hit your gut. I'll give you a bit of a sales pitch. They're going to hit your gut, and you just have to work through that. But then you get a sales pitch. If you're the Yank and you're going to work 8 hours a day to come across with money for a bicycle for the children, 3 guesses who gets to father the next generation of children. If that was you, then I promise you poverty would fly right out the window. So here will be a bunch of Yanks. If you're a gal, please join our group on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And tell us what you need for a family budget. If this were the 1950s United States and you were on the TV show Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best, how much money would you need to run a household, to run a family budget? And if you're that young man, how many hours would you have to work in order to come up with that family budget? If you do that, then we can go to work. We know exactly what's wrong, we know exactly what to do about it, and we know exactly how to do it. See you on the next Standard.